There's this piece of advice that I think almost every single person listening has heard at some point. Maybe it was a coach screaming it from the sidelines or, a cynical uncle at a family
Oh,
barbecue.
I think I know exactly where you're going with this. It's the golden rule of cynicism, isn't it?
Exactly. Nice guys finish last.
It is.
It's practically baked into our cultural DNA, this idea that to get ahead in the real world, especially in business, you have to be tough, you have to be
You
ruthless.
have to look out for number one because, hey, if you don't, who will?
Right. And it creates this really uncomfortable tension for a lot of us because think about it. That's the message of the corporate jungle. It's dog eat dog.
Hmm.
But then you go home and you listen to what we tell our kids. We teach them to share their toys. We teach them to be kind, that generosity is a virtue. So we grow up with this weird kind of bifurcated worldview.
Be a saint at home, but be a shark at work. It's like you have to have two different personalities.
You have to flip a switch the moment you walk through the office doors. But here's the question we are really wrestling with today. What if that cynicism is just, well, wrong? What if nice guys finish last isn't just a bleak worldview, but actually a fundamental, almost mathematical misunderstanding of how success really works?
That is the core question. And to answer it, we're not just going to rely on anecdotes or, feel-good platitudes. We are doing a deep dive today into a book that really shook things up, Give and Take, A Revolutionary Approach to Success by Adam Grant.
For anyone who doesn't know, Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist. He's a professor at Wharton. He is basically a detective of social dynamics. He spent, over a decade looking at the hard data behind who actually wins and who loses in the workplace.
And this book, it's one of those rare ones that doesn't just offer you a few career tips. It challenges the underlying physics of our social interactions. His core argument is so fascinating because it suggests that in the long run, the most successful people aren't the ones grabbing as much as they can.
It's the opposite.
It's the complete opposite. They're the ones contributing the most.
But, and this is a massive but that we need to put on the table right away, he also admits that the nice guys often do finish last.
And that is the paradox we need to unpack today. The data shows that the people at the very, very bottom of the success ladder, the ones with the lowest salaries, the lowest productivity, the ones getting walked all over, they are indeed the nice guys.
Okay, so the cynics are right. My uncle at the barbecue was right all along.
Half right, which is the most interesting kind of right. Because if you look at the very top of that same ladder, the absolute best performers, the superstars, the top salespeople, they're also the nice guys.
Wait, that's incredibly confusing. So the people who give the most are both the biggest losers and the biggest winners. How does that even work?
It's a U-shaped curve.
Yeah.
He shows that the takers and the matchers, which we need to define, they tend to cluster there in the middle. But the givers, they're at the extremes. They're either the champs or they are the chumps.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear then. We need to figure out what separates the champs from the chumps. How do you become a successful giver without just becoming a doormat for everyone else to walk on?
Exactly. And to do that, we first need to lay the groundwork. Grant identifies these three basic reciprocity styles. And the idea is that every time you interact with someone, whether you're buying a coffee or negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract, you are operating from one of these three styles.
Let's break these down because I think everyone listening is going to immediately start categorizing their coworkers. Let's start with the villains of the story, the takers.
The takers are pretty much what they sound like. Their distinctive signature, their internal monologue is, "What can you do for me?" They are laser-focused on claiming value, on getting as much as they can out of every interaction.
And it's important to say, Grant notes that takers aren't necessarily cruel or sociopathic, right, though some certainly are.
That's a great point. Often their behavior comes from a place of caution, specific worldview. They see the world as a zero-sum game.
There's a limited amount of pie.
Exactly. If you get a slice, that is one less slice for me. So from their perspective, it's logical. If I don't look out for myself aggressively, no one else will. So they self-promote, they protect their time, and they always try to get more than they give.
Right, it's a competitive mindset. If I win, you have to lose. Okay, so on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have the givers.
Right. The giver's focus is the mirror image. What can I do for you? They're wired to pay attention to what other people need. And we really need to clarify this because the word giver can sound a little soft, maybe a little weak.
Yeah, you picture someone who just can't say no.
Mm-hmm. But Grant isn't just talking about people who donate to charity or volunteer on the weekends. This is a professional interaction style.
So this is the person who stays late to help a colleague with a project that isn't even theirs, not because they have to, but because they just want to help the team.
Exactly that person. These are people who freely share their time, their knowledge, their ideas, and their connections without expecting an immediate or even any return. They contribute value without keeping a running tally.
And then there's that third group, which I suspect is where most of us actually live most of the time, the matchers.
You are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Grant's research shows the vast majority of people, especially in a professional setting, operate as matchers. The matcher's mantra is quid pro quo.
An eye for an eye.
I'll scratch your back if and only if you scratch mine. It's all about fairness and equal exchange. It feels very safe and very just.
It sounds like the safest way to live, to be honest. You don't get taken advantage of, but you're also not a jerk.
It's just very safe.
Hmm?
If a matcher does you a favor, they have a little mental ledger, and they expect a favor of a similar size back. If that ledger gets out of balance, they start to feel really uncomfortable. It's a way to protect yourself from being exploited by takers, while also, not coming across as totally selfish. You stay in the middle.
But as we said at the top, safe lands you in the middle of the success curve. It doesn't get you to the top.
Right. And to understand why givers dominate the top tier, we have to look at the difference between the short game and the long game. Grant tells this incredible story about a venture capitalist named David Hornick that illustrates this just perfectly.
Now, venture capital is usually seen as a shark tank, right? It's not a field known for its generosity.
Not at all. It's hyper-competitive. And usually when a VC finds a hot startup, they use leverage. They use something called an exploding offer.
That sounds intense. What is an exploding offer?
It's a total power move.
Yeah.
They give the entrepreneur a term sheet, and that's the contract for the investment. And they'll say something like, you have 24 hours to sign this, or the money goes away forever.
Wow. Okay, so it forces a quick decision, and more importantly, it stops the entrepreneur from shopping the deal around to other investors to see if they can get better terms.
Exactly. It locks out the competition. It's a classic taker tactic. I win, you sign now. But Hornick operates completely differently. He's a giver. So he meets this entrepreneur named Danny Shader. Hornick loves the idea. He really wants to invest.
Okay, so here's the moment of truth.
Right. And instead of the exploding offer, Hornick looks at Shader and says, take as much time as you need.
Yeah.
Shop it around. I want you to make the absolute right decision for you and your company.
He's literally giving away his leverage. He is telling the guy, go talk to my competitors, please. I don't get it.
It's completely counterintuitive. He's putting the entrepreneur's long-term interest above his own short-term interest. And in the short term, it backfired spectacularly.
Let me guess. Shader walked and signed with someone else.
He did. Shader actually signed with a competitor, and the reason why is almost heartbreaking. Shader admitted later he liked Hornick more as a person, but he said his heart said Hornick, but his head said the competitor.
What does that mean? He was worried Hornick was too nice.
Exactly. He thought, if this guy is this nice and accommodating to me now, when he's trying to win the deal, how is he going to be in the boardroom? Will he be tough enough to challenge me when I need it? Will he fight for our company?
He conflated kindness with weakness. He thought a giver couldn't be a strong partner, so Hornick lost the deal.
He lost the deal. And this sounds like a perfect example of nice guys finish last.
It really does. Case closed.
If you stop the movie there, yes.
Yeah.
If life was a 100-yard dash, the taker wins that race every time. But life is a marathon, and what happened next is the key. Shader felt incredibly guilty about turning Hornick down.
Because Hornick had been so decent.
He'd been so helpful and transparent. So a year or so later, when Shader's company was raising another round of funding, he actually invited Hornick to invest. But more importantly, Shader starts referring other massive opportunities to Hornick.
He became an advocate, a champion for him.
He became a super connector. He tells everyone in Silicon Valley, this is the best, most entrepreneur-friendly guy in the business. So Hornick's reputation as a giver became his single biggest asset.
And what are the numbers? Does this actually pay off in a measurable way?
The numbers are insane. Hornick has an 89% signing rate for the term sheets he offers. The industry average is around 50%. By playing the long game, by building this reputation for generosity, the best deals come to him. He doesn't have to chase them with exploding offers.
That is such a powerful reframing. It actually reminds me of another story Grant tells about Abraham Lincoln. We think of Lincoln as this monumental figure, almost mythic. But early in his career, he was, kind of a backwoods lawyer.
They call him Samson's ghost in letters he wrote to the local paper because he was so thin and scraggly. And he was a massive giver. in a field that is maybe even more dominated by takers than venture capital politics.
The Lincoln story that really stood out to me was the Senate race in 1855. This just perfectly highlights the giver's strategy.
Yes. Okay, so Lincoln is running for the Senate in Illinois. He's leading after the first few ballots with 47% of the vote. He is painfully close to winning. But there's a taker in the race, a guy named Madison, who is gaining ground really fast by basically buying votes.
And there was a third candidate in the mix, right? A smaller one.
Right, a man named Lyman Trumbull. He only had about 5% support. Now, Lincoln did the political math. He realized that if he stayed in the race, he and Trumbull would split the anti-Madison vote, and Madison, the taker, was almost certainly going to win.
So the taker strategy here would be to bully Trumbull into dropping out. I have 47%, you have 5%, get out of my way. A masher would try to cut a deal.
Correct. But Lincoln did the opposite. He looked at the bigger picture, the greater good. He knew Trumbull was a man of integrity who aligned with his core values, especially on the issue of slavery. So Lincoln dropped out. He threw all of his support to Trumbull just to ensure the taker didn't win.
He sacrificed his own career, his own ambition for the cause. That is just, it's insane. Most politicians would burn the entire house down before giving up a 47% lead.
A taker absolutely would. But here's a long-term payoff. Years later, when Lincoln ran for president in 1860, guess who his fiercest, most effective allies were?
It had to be Trumbull and all of his supporters.
Exactly. Trumbull never forgot that sacrifice. It built a debt of loyalty that was far more powerful than any short-term win. And when Lincoln won the presidency, he famously appointed his bitter rivals, Seward, Chase, Bates, to his cabinet.
The team of rivals.
This whole concept is pure giver strategy. A taker surrounds himself with yes men to protect his ego. A matcher appoints friends and allies who helped him get elected. But a giver appoints the best people for the job, for the good of the country, even if they are his rivals.
And that cabinet, that diversity of thought, is what allowed him to navigate the Civil War. So in the short run, Lincoln lost a Senate seat. In the long run, he saved the Union.
That is the giver's timeline. It takes time for that ripple effect of generosity to circle back to you, but when it does, it's a tidal wave.
I want to shift gears to something super practical that we all have to do and most of us hate. Networking, because I feel like networking is where the taker personality really, tries to shine. Grant uses this great analogy of the peacock versus the panda.
Yes, this is a great one. The peacock is the taker. Takers can be very, very good at networking, but it's often superficial. They are masters of what Grant calls kissing up and kicking down.
Oh, I hate that phrase because it is so painfully accurate. We've all seen this person. They are unbelievably charming to the boss. They're laughing at all their jokes, but then they turn around and treat the receptionist or the assistant like they're invisible.
Exactly. Grant points to Ken Lay, the former CEO of Enron, as sort of the archetype here. Lay was incredibly charismatic. He was a darling of Wall Street. He schmoozed politicians. He was a huge charitable donor, a real peacock.
Yeah.
But internally, he created a culture of fear, exploitation, and, well, we all know how that ended.
And there's this fascinating, almost bizarre detail about Lecking in the book. You have to tell us about the CEO photos.
This is one of my favorite studies in the whole book. So, lecking in the animal kingdom is when male birds, like peacocks, show off their plumage to attract mates. Grant and his colleagues analyzed the annual reports of major companies, and they found that in taker-led companies, the photograph of the CEO was significantly larger than in giver-led companies.
No way. The literal physical size of the picture in the report?
The literal size. Sometimes it would be a full-page, glossy glamour shot of the CEO all alone. In giver-led companies, the photos were smaller, or they were group shots that included the whole leadership team. It's a very subtle signal of ego.
That's amazing. And they analyzed the text too, right?
They did. They found that takers use pronouns like I and me significantly more often than we and us. It's all about them.
So if you're reading an annual report and the CEO looks like a movie star and only talks about himself, maybe sell the stock.
It's a definite red flag. But the real problem with the takers network is that it's fragile. It's built on transaction and manipulation. When a taker falls, like Ken Lay did, nobody is there to catch them. In fact, people cheer. The matchers, who, remember, want fairness above all, feel a deep need to see the taker punished for their selfishness.
Okay, so contrast that with the panda. This is Adam Rifkin.
Adam Rifkin is so fascinating because he is the absolute opposite of a smooth operator. He's a shy, introverted software engineer. He admits he hates public speaking, he's not a schmoozer, and yet Fortune magazine named him the best networker in the United States.
How on earth does a shy engineer become the best networker in the country?
By using a simple principle he calls the 5-minute favor. This is a tool your listeners should absolutely steal and start using tomorrow. His philosophy is this: you should be willing to do anything for anyone, provided it takes you less than 5 minutes.
Okay, so it's a small investment.
It's a tiny investment for you, but it can create huge value for them, and you do it with no expectation of anything in return.
Give us some examples. What is a 5-minute favor?
It could be writing a quick recommendation for someone on LinkedIn. It could be making an email introduction between two people who you know would benefit from meeting each other. It could be spending 5 minutes giving honest feedback on a colleague's presentation slide. Small to you, potentially huge to them.
And because he does this constantly for everyone without asking for anything back, he's built this massive reservoir of goodwill across his entire network.
Exactly. And this touches on a really important concept Grant calls dormant ties. This is
Yeah.
crucial for anyone who is looking for a new job or a new opportunity. We all have our strong ties, our close friends, our immediate colleagues, but they usually know the same people and information we do. We're all in the same echo chamber.
Right. If I ask my best friend about job openings, he's probably already seen the same ones I have. There's no new information there.
Exactly. The real value, the novel information, often lies in our dormant ties. People you haven't talked to in 3 or 4 or 5 years. They have been off in different worlds, learning different things, meeting different people.
But it feels so awkward to reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in 5 years. If you feel like, well, you feel like a taker. Hey, long time no see, by the way. Can you get me a job?
That's it. If you are a taker, you probably burn that bridge anyway. If you are a matcher, you feel incredibly awkward because you haven't paid into that relationship recently, so you feel like you're in debt and have no right to ask. But givers like Rifkin, they can reactivate dormant ties instantly with zero awkwardness.
Because they have that history, that track record of helping.
Yes. When Adam Rifkin emails someone he hasn't seen in 5 years, they are delighted to hear from him. Their first thought isn't, ugh, what does he want? Their first thought is, oh, great. I wonder if he's checking in or has something cool to share. This creates a state that Grant calls pronia.
Pronia. I love this word. It's so optimistic.
It's the exact opposite of paranoia. Paranoia is the belief that the world is secretly plotting to get you. Pronia is the belief that the world is secretly conspiring to help you. And for true givers, Grant argues, that's not a delusion. It's actually reality. Adam Rifkin's network is constantly trying to find ways to help him succeed because they like and respect him so much.
That is a beautiful way to live and work. Now, let's shift to collaboration, because there's this myth of the lone genius. We love the idea of the brilliant architect or this solitary writer who creates a masterpiece in total isolation. But Graham argues that givers are actually better collaborators, even if they don't always get the credit up front.
He draws this fantastic contrast between Frank Lloyd Wright, the legendary architect, and a man named George Meyer. Now, most people know Frank Lloyd Wright.
Of course, Fallingwater, the Guggenheim, the man is an icon.
He is. But he was also a classic taker. He famously refused to pay his apprentices. He demanded total credit for every single aspect of a building. He even tried to claim he designed some of his own son's buildings. His motto was basically, truth against the world, the independent genius standing alone.
And George Meyer. I feel like I should know that name, but I'm drawing a blank.
You might not know his name, but you absolutely know his work. George Meyer was the driving creative force behind The Simpsons during its golden age in the 1990s.
Okay, that is huge. That shows cultural bedrock for a whole generation.
It is. But Meyer operated as a genius maker, not a genius. In the writer's room of The Simpsons, which was full of massive egos, he wasn't fighting to get his own jokes into the script. He would find the weakest jokes or the most broken plot points from other writers and work tirelessly to fix them, just to make the show better. He gave away his best lines and his credit constantly.
But didn't that hurt his career? If he's giving away his best lines to other people, isn't he just diluting his own brand and letting them get the credit?
You'd think so, but it was quite the opposite. It created this ripple effect. Because he made everyone around him better, everyone wanted to work with him. The most talented writers in Hollywood lined up to be on his team. His reputation for making the whole team shine was sterling. And this links to a cognitive concept Grant discusses called the perspective gap.
Unpack that for us. What's the perspective gap?
Takers often suffer from a severe perspective gap. They are so focused on what they want, what they think, that they literally cannot imagine how another person feels or sees the world. It's why they often give bad gifts or make tone-deaf comments. They're locked inside their own head.
They're constantly transmitting, but they're never receiving.
Perfectly put. Givers, on the other hand, naturally engage in perspective taking. They're always asking, how will this land with the audience? How does my collaborator feel about this change I'm suggesting? How will the end user actually interact with this product? That empathy, that ability to see from another's point of view actually makes the final product, whether it's a TV script, a building, or a piece of software, objectively better.
So the taker might win the argument in the meeting through sheer force of will, but the giver wins the war because they create something people actually love and want to use.
Precisely. And they build a team of people who are excited to help them succeed again on the very next project. The taker leaves a trail of resentment. The giver leaves a trail of allies.
I want to move to something that I think every manager listening really needs to hear. This is about identifying talent. We're all obsessed with finding talent, the natural superstar, the A player. But Grant suggests givers look for something else entirely.
This is the amazing story of C.J. Skender, who's an accounting professor at UNC. And this guy has produced an absolutely insane number of medal-winning CPAs. I mean, his students consistently rank in the top 10 in the entire country on the CPA exam. His track record is statistically impossible.
So what's his secret? Does he have some crazy admissions process where he only accepts the absolute smartest students?
No, that's what everyone assumes. His secret is that he treats every single student like they are a diamond in the rough. He doesn't wait for talent to show itself. He believes his job is to create it by setting incredibly high expectations for everyone from day one.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, the Pygmalion effect.
It is. See, a taker manager is often threatened by talent. They don't want a subordinate who might outshine them. A matcher manager plays it safe. They wait for you to prove yourself before they'll invest in you. Their attitude is, show me the numbers, hit your targets, then I'll mentor you.
But givers invest first. They take the risk.
They see potential where others don't. They create what psychologists call bloomers. People who bloom and excel specifically because someone believed in them and invested in them before they had proven anything.
But doesn't that lead to a lot of bad investments? I mean, if you invest time and energy in everyone, aren't you wasting a lot of it on people who just aren't going to make it?
That is a great question, and it brings us to a huge psychological trap in business called escalation of commitment. Imagine you're the general manager of an NBA team, and you use your #1 draft pick on a player who turns out to be a bust.
Like drafting Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan, the classic cautionary tale.
Exactly. Now, if you're the GM who made that pick, and you're a taker, admitting that you made a colossal mistake is a huge blow to your ego and your reputation. So what do?
You double down. You give him more playing time to prove you were right all along.
You escalate your commitment to a bad decision. We see this in business all the time, throwing good money after bad projects because the VP who championed it doesn't want to admit failure.
Right. But a giver.
A giver's loyalty is to the team's success, not their own ego. They are far more willing to say, you know what, I made a mistake here. This player isn't working out. For the good of the team, we need to cut our losses and pivot. So givers actually make better strategic decisions over the long run because they aren't blinded by the need to be right all the time. They value grit, that passion and perseverance over just raw, innate talent.
This brings us to the art of influence, which is so interesting. We're always taught that to be influential, you need to be alpha. Speak loudly, be assertive, project absolute certainty, be the gorilla in the room.
The dominance model of leadership. It's the standard advice we give to leaders. But Grant introduces this really counterintuitive concept he calls powerless communication.
Powerless communication. That sounds like a terrible marketing slogan. It just sounds weak.
It feels that way on the surface. But let's look at the science. He talks about the pratfall effect. There was this fascinating study where they had people watch videos of a lawyer, Dave Walton, making a case in court. He was up against a very slick, polished, confident opponent. But Walton stuttered. He got nervous, lost his train of thought a couple of times.
And I'm guessing the jury ate him alive.
The jury trusted him more. They ended up ruling in his favor.
Why on earth would that be?
Because he seemed human. The slick opponent seemed like he was performing, like a perfect, unrelatable robot. Walton's vulnerability made him seem authentic and trustworthy. But, and this is a massive caveat that we have to stress, the pratfall effect, where being a little clumsy or vulnerable makes you more likable, only works if you have already established that you are competent.
Okay, that's the key. So if I'm incompetent and I spill coffee on myself during a presentation, I'm just a mess.
Correct. But if you're a Nobel Prize-winning physicist and you spill coffee on yourself, You're brilliant and approachable. You're relatable. Competence first, vulnerability second.
How does this apply to something like sales? Because sales is usually the definition of high-pressure, dominant communication.
Grant tells the story of an optician named Don Lane. Instead of the hard sell, this frame looks great on you, you should buy it, he would use powerless communication. He would ask questions. What do you think of this frame? How does that feel on your face?
So he's ceding control of the conversation to the customer.
He is. And by ceding control, he gains their trust. Because you're inviting the customer to convince themselves. You're not pushing them. Takers preach, givers ask.
And then there's the ultimate form of this, seeking advice. This is my favorite tactic from the entire book, the story of Annie.
Annie was in a really tough spot at her company. She needed to get a transfer to a different office for family reasons, but she was also in the middle of her MBA, which the company was paying for. If she moved, the policy said she'd lose the tuition support.
A taker would have walked into her boss's office and demanded an exception. A matcher would have tried to call in a favor they were owed.
But Annie, using a giver strategy, went to her boss and simply asked, "What would you do in my shoes?"
What would you do? That's it.
That's a magic phrase. When you ask someone for advice, two incredible things happen. One, it's the highest form of flattery. You're implicitly saying, I respect your wisdom and experience.
Oh.
And two, it forces them to take your perspective. They have to mentally step into your situation to even begin to answer the question.
And suddenly your problem becomes their problem to solve.
Exactly. Her boss became her advocate. He started digging around, trying to find a solution, and he found a loophole she never would have known about. The corporate jet was flying between those two cities every week anyway, so she could just commute. She got the transfer, and Dee finished her degree.
And she didn't have to fight or make demands. By being powerless and asking for help, she actually turned her boss into a giver on her behalf.
But, and this is so critical, it has to be genuine. If you ask for advice as a manipulative tactic, people will smell it a mile away. You have to actually be open to wanting their advice.
Okay, we have to address the elephant in the room. We established right at the start that givers are also at the bottom of the ladder. They burn out, they get taken advantage of. How do we stop that? This is maybe the most important part of this whole deep dive for me, the difference between being selfless and being otherish.
This is the survival guide. This is how you avoid being a chump and become a champ. The givers who fail are what Grant calls selfless. They have high interest in helping others, but very low interest in their own well-being. They're the people who drop everything to help anyone who asks. They never say no.
This is Lillian Bauer, the consultant from the book.
Exactly. Lillian Bauer was a consultant who didn't make partner because she was so busy helping all the junior analysts with their projects that she forgot to manage her own client list and her own career. She became a doormat.
So what's the alternative?
The successful givers are what Grant calls otherish. It's a great term. They have high interest in others. But Dee, they also have high self-interest. They're still ambitious. They want to succeed. They just believe the best way to do that is in a way that lifts others up, too.
So they put on their own oxygen mask first before helping others.
That's a perfect way to put it. And they use specific tactics to protect their energy. One of them is chunking.
Chunking versus sprinkling. This is about how you schedule your giving, right?
Right. There was this fascinating study on happiness. One group was told to perform 5 acts of kindness all in one day. That's chunking. The other group was told to spread them out, 1 a day for 5 days. That's sprinkling. The chunkers reported being significantly happier and less drained.
Why? You'd think doing something nice every single day would be a better mood booster.
Because if you sprinkle your giving, it starts to feel like a constant distraction. It's just another thing on your to-do list. I have to stop what I'm doing to help Bob with his spreadsheet now.
Yeah.
It breaks your flow and feels like an obligation.
But if you chunk it.
If you chunk it, it feels like a meaningful event. Okay, Friday afternoon is my mentorship time. You get a concentrated burst of satisfaction from helping several people without fracturing your focus during the rest of the week.
So you protect your time in order to remain effective.
Exactly. And the other key to avoiding burnout is seeing the impact of your giving.
This is where Grant talks about the call center employees.
This is one of his most famous studies. These were university employees calling alumni to raise money for scholarships. It's a grueling, thankless job. You get hung up on all day long. The burnout rate is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
But Grant's team brought in a student who had actually received one of these scholarships. And the callers got to talk to him for just 5 minutes and hear how the scholarship had changed his life. What do you think happened to their productivity the next week?
It went up a little, 20%,
It tripled.
tripled, just from meeting one person for 5 minutes.
Tripled. Because givers don't burn out from the hard work. They burn out when they feel like their giving doesn't matter. It's the feeling of futility that's exhausting. But when they can see the impact, this money I'm raising helped Will go to college, they are endlessly energized.
So be otherish, protect your time, chunk your giving, and make sure you see the impact. But what about the sharks?
Yeah.
How do you handle a taker who is actively trying to exploit your generosity?
This is where sincerity screening comes in. He argues that we tend to make a huge mistake. We confuse agreeableness with giving.
Right. We assume that if someone is smiley and polite, they must be a nice person, a giver. And if they're grumpy or critical, they must be a selfish taker.
But agreeable is just a personality trait. It's the outer packaging. Giving is a value system. It's what's inside. So you can have an agreeable giver. That's the classic nice person. You can have a disagreeable taker, the obvious jerk, easy to spot. But the two confusing and important categories are the disagreeable givers and the agreeable takers.
Okay, the disagreeable giver. That's the gruff boss who yells at you about your margins, but then secretly spends all weekend helping you prep for your big presentation.
Exactly. They are rough on the outside, gold on the inside. Think of a really tough mentor or coach. They give you the hard, critical feedback because they care about you getting better, not to make you feel bad.
But the real villain of the story is the agreeable taper.
The faker. This is the most dangerous person in any organization. The one who smiles to your face, says, "Let's do lunch," offers to collaborate, and then steals your clients or takes credit for your idea behind your back. This is the person who ruthlessly exploits the selfless giver.
So how do we deal with the fakers without becoming cynical and untrusting of everyone?
Grant suggests a brilliant strategy from game theory called generous tit for tat.
Okay, break that down for us. It sounds complicated.
It's actually pretty simple. The standard tit for tat strategy is pure matching. If you cooperate with me, I'll cooperate with you. If you punch me, I'll punch you right back. But generous tit for tat is a better strategy for givers. It goes like this. Step 1, you always start as a giver. You trust people until you have a reason not to.
Okay, so you default to open and trusting.
But step 2, if the other person acts like a taker, if they burn you or exploit you, you immediately shift into matcher mode. You stop giving freely. You demand reciprocity. You protect yourself. You don't let them exploit you a second time.
I put up the shield, you stop being a doormat.
But here is the crucial generous part. Step 3, you don't hold the grudge forever. Every once in a while, you should switch back to giver mode just for one interaction to offer them a chance at redemption. You forgive because maybe they were having a bad day, or maybe you misread the situation, or maybe they can change.
So it's trust, but verify. Punish bad behavior, but always offer a path back to cooperation.
Exactly. That feels very sustainable, doesn't it? It's not being a doormat, but it's also not becoming a bitter, cynical matcher or taker yourself. It allows you to navigate a world with takers in it without losing your soul.
We've talked a lot about the individual, but I want to close by looking at the bigger picture, the environment. Can you actually create a culture in a company or a team where takers start acting more like givers?
Absolutely. Grant says you can. Look at the difference between Craigslist and a platform like FreeCycle.
Craigslist is purely transactional, right? It's a matching system.
It's pure matching. I pay X dollars, I get your old couch. It's a one-to-one exchange. But FreeCycle is a network where people just give stuff away for free. I have a toaster I don't need anymore. Who wants it?
And takers use FreeCycle too, I'm sure. They like free stuff.
Of course they do. But on FreeCycle, Grant notes, even the takers start to act like givers because the system is designed that way. The identity of the group, the social norm, is we are a community that gives things to each other. And to fit in, you have to play by those rules.
So the structure of the environment dictates the behavior.
It's hugely influential. And he talks about a powerful exercise that companies can actually do to build this culture. It's called the reciprocity ring.
What's that? How does it work?
It's simple. You get the group of people together in a circle. Each person has to make a request, something they need help with, personal or professional. And then everyone else in the room has to try to use their knowledge and network to help fulfill those requests.
What does that achieve? Why is that so effective?
It does two brilliant things. One, it gives givers, who are usually terrible at asking for help, permission to finally ask. It makes it safe. And two, it makes giving public. Takers care deeply about their reputation. In a reciprocity ring, if you just sit there and don't offer to help anyone while everyone else is pitching in, you look like a selfish jerk.
So the takers start helping, even if it's just to look good.
They fake it till they make it. And what's amazing is that often, once they start giving and see the positive social feedback, they realize it actually feels good. They start to internalize the identity of a giver. You can literally engineer a giving culture.
That is incredibly hopeful. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the one big takeaway for the listener driving to work right now, thinking about their next big meeting?
I think the biggest thing is that we need to redefine what success looks like. We're taught from a young age that success is a zero-sum game. It's about winning, about beating the competition. But Grant's work shows us the power of the ripple effect. True, lasting success is about creating value that lifts everyone up.
And it's actually healthier for you. I love that 100-hour rule Grant mentions at the end of the book.
Yes, the research shows the sweet spot for volunteering or giving your time is about 100 hours a year. It's just 2 hours a week. That's the amount that maximizes happiness, life satisfaction, and even longevity. Less than that, you don't feel the impact. Significantly more than that, you risk burnout.
2 hours a week. We can all find 2 hours a week to help someone.
And try the 5-minute favor. Today, do one small thing for someone that takes you less than 5 minutes and helps them out. See what happens. It's a small experiment that can change your entire outlook.
I'm going to leave you with a quote that's in the sources from the Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon. He said, "The intelligent altruists, though less altruistic than the unintelligent altruists, will be fitter than both unintelligent altruists and selfish individuals."
Be an intelligent giver. Be otherish.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Go out there and give, but do it intelligently. We'll see you next time.